we had talked about the basic unit of life. Now we are quite aware of that basic unit, that was the cell. We know what it is made up of, what are its components, what is its structural organization. Now we have to take the next step. Now what is that next step? We have to understand what tissues are all about. Now whenever I am talking about these tissues, we have taken the next step in the level of organization. Now because we are moving further step by step, let us talk a little bit about level of organization. So the thing that we deal with before we jump to what are tissues, let us see level of organization, what it is all about. Okay. Now when I say level of organization, try to recall another term we have talked about, that is division of labor, sorry, not labor, it is division of labor that we talked about, that we understood when we had to discuss about the organelles. I introduced you to cell organelles by discussing the term of division of labor, if you can recall. Now this division of labor can be understood if we know well in detail about the level of organization. Now you see, we were introduced to two more terms. First one was multicellular organisms and the very basic unicellular organisms. In the case of unicellular organisms, I gave you the example of amoeba. You remember it by heart, I know till now. Now when we talk about level of organization, in case the organism is unicellular, that means the living entity is unicellular, the body of the organism, whether a plant or an animal or the rest of the classifications that we have in the higher levels of our understanding, if it is unicellular, all the functions are to be performed by a single cell. Now what functions are to be performed about? Let us see what the functions are. You know, for survival we need to do metabolism. I have been using this term metabolism time and again. For now, just restrict your understanding to one thing, that what is metabolism? Metabolism is the driving force which is responsible for certain activities that our body carries. First one is digestion, simplest thing. First thing that comes in mind is, you know, few things our mind cannot resist, and food is one of them. So we talk about digestion. Then once digestion has been done, that nutrient, whichever nutrient content has been taken, that is to be broken down and energy is to be taken out by the process of respiration. Then whatever is not required by the body, excretion is to be done. And in case some sort of response to stimulus, so response we can say, okay, or conscious control we can say. These are the things which distinguish a living thing from a non-living thing, and if all these functions are performed by a single cell, just a single cell would perform the process of digestion, the same single cell would perform the process of respiration. If it has to excrete, it would have a vacuole for excretion. If it has a conscious control, it would have some sort of stimulus respondence that it shows. So there are various, not just these four, there are many other functions which could be performed by the cell, but these would be the most fundamental ones. What we have in our mind is that this is the simplest organization. Here we cannot have level of organization. Why? Because it is just one cell. In the case of multicellular organism, the cells that are present inside the animal or the plant, or let us say organism, they are in millions. Now you see, there is one thing that you often observe in your day-to-day life as well, that if the work is divided, that means if a person or a machinery, something you can take as an example, if it has to perform a single work, it performs in a better way as compared to if it has to do all the works. Alright. Now you might take the example of a cricket match, you can say. There is a batsman who is not well adapted, or you can say he is not that perfect in bowling, or there is a bowler who is not that perfect in batting. There are all-rounders though, but you take the best batsman would not be a good bowler, and a best bowler would not be a good batsman. So I am just giving you an example that you see there is a division of labor basically. Now division of labor is getting quite clear by now, that in case the cell is given a single work, it will be efficiently be able to do it. And in the case of multicellular organisms, where there are millions of cells, the work can be divided as per division of labor. And when the work can be divided, then we have levels of organization. Am I able to make my point clear to you? Just I'm repeating it. Try to understand that in this case, a single cell had to do all the activities, as I gave you the case of cricket example, that in the case of multicellular organisms, because there would be millions of cells, it is easy for assigning a particular job to a group of cells, okay, and they will be able to perform that particular job in a better way. So we have division of labor, and whenever there is division of labor in presence of millions and billions of cells of an organism, we can see the level of organization. Now what are the levels of organizations in multicellular organism? Now when we talk about this, just forget that this is going to be visible in unicellular organisms. It would be present in multicellular organisms only. What would be the level of organization? There would be cells. Many cells would unite to form tissues, and that is the topic we have to study. Many cells would combine to form tissues. Now because this is level of organization governed by division of labor, these group of cells would be performing one particular function, okay, basic function. Now few tissues which would be performing 2 or 3 functions would combine to form an organ, and this organ would be performing, this one function is smaller, the function goes bigger, another function, okay, see the size of one. By the size of one I am trying to tell you the work that it is doing. Then the organs combine to perform organ system. That means many organs would come together and form the organ system. Take the example of your sensory system. You have eyes, you have nose, you have skin, you have tongue, you have ear. These are the 4 or 5 different sense organs which give you a perception of the surroundings, whatever is happening around you, and that is the organ system, sensory system as we call it. So we have many organs together performing one function. See the size of one is increasing, okay. Then we have the highest level of organization, that is an organism which performs all functions, and the one over here would be so huge that it wouldn't fit in the board. So basically this is what is the level of organization. We have to deal with this. Okay, and when we are dealing with these tissues, we have to deal with plant and animal tissues only. Now before we jump to next topic of understanding, what we have to learn is that why do we study plant tissue and animal tissue differently? And if we study it differently, there must be some point of difference, and that difference of points is in the basic behavior that we observe in the case of plants and animals, okay. So we have 2 types of tissues, plant tissues and animal tissues, alright. And the second one is animal tissues. Now how they are different? First and the foremost thing is, these are located at one place. That means they are attached to the soil. They do not move from one place to another. That means they don't show any type of locomotion. These have to go from places to places in search of food. That is what animal life is all about. That you have to go places in search of food because you cannot make your own food. They need not to go to any place because they can make their own food. So these are stationary, these are motile. Okay, first point of difference. So in the case of stationary plants, what we have is that maximum of the tissues that are present, or let's not go to the tissue level, maximum of the cells which are present, which form the tissues, they are dead. So the plant body is made up of dead tissues mostly. Why? Because it gives them mechanical strength. Dead part gives mechanical strength. Take the example of wood. Wood is dead plant tissue, and that gives the mechanical strength, okay? And they are dead mostly, okay? Maximum part of the plant is dead because they need more mechanical strength. In comparison to animal tissues, in comparison to plant tissues, the animal tissues are not dead. They are mostly living. Why they are living? Because the animals have to go from one place to another. They have more agile life basically. So they cannot be dead. So they are going to be living. And over here, this dead does not refer to all dead tissues. Mostly dead, I would say. Okay, you will see when we study in detail that most of the plant tissues are dead. Second thing is that plants show growth at certain places, okay? Animals show accumulative growth or holistic growth, I would say. Why I am saying that at places? Because you see that the trunk grows but the leaves do not grow on trunk. There is no leaf growth in the root. If the root has to grow at certain stage, it would go up to that point, but there would be no growth after that. So they grow at specific points. Moreover, the plant growth continues entire life. That means every year the plant is going to shed the leaves, the new leaves are going to come. And in the case of animals, that is not the case, because the plants are having a specific type of tissue that is known as meristematic tissue. Now this meristematic tissue is responsible for dividing entire life. It gives rise to new cells and it does not lose its ability to divide ever. In the case of animal cells, such meristematic cells are present though in the stem cells which are present in the embryonic stages, but later on they are replaced and we do not have as much as meristematic tissue as in the case of stem cells. And the last thing is that these plant tissues are of two types, that is permanent and meristematic, while the animal tissues are of four types. Now let us talk about the types which are present, so that once we study them in detail, at least you have familiarized yourself with the terms that are present in the plant tissues. As I told you, plant tissues are of two types. One is meristematic, that is not going to leave its stop its activity or ability, I would say, to divide ever. So these cells are not going to lose their ability to divide, and the other ones are permanent. These meristematic tissues are going to give rise to the permanent tissue which will not be having the ability to divide. This meristematic tissue, depending on where it is present, it is apical meristem or lateral meristem, okay? Otherwise, there is another classification, that is whether it is primary meristem or the secondary meristem. Just learn it. Meristematic tissue would be classified into two types on the basis of the location, that would be apical or lateral. Otherwise, in the terms of their development, when they have developed, that would be primary and secondary. Coming to the permanent tissue which have developed from this meristematic only, we have two types. One is, don't be appropriate to put it like this, one is simple and other one is complex, okay? Now the difference is that these cells are not going to divide entire life. They have lost the ability to divide, give rise to new cells. They are not meristematic. The simple ones have similar types of cells. The similar types of cells, tissues are, first one is parenchyma. Remember the name, parenchyma. The other one is, all of these are going to be chyma, and the word is going to be different. There is a chyma, but it is collenchyma this time. Third one is again a chyma, but here we have sclerenchyma, okay? Sclerenchyma. I am just making you introduced to these terms, so it is easy for you to learn. This is living, this is living, this is dead, okay? Then in the complex we have xylem and phloem. Now, when I talk about complex permanent tissue, they are made up of different types of cells. Over here, the parenchyma would be made up of same types of cells. If I take the example of parenchyma like this is the part that is being observed. All the cells would be similar. They would not vary. Suppose this is A type of cell, this is A type, all of them would be A type. But in the case of complex tissues, I am not going to find similar types of cells. Supposedly this is A type, then I have B type, then I have C type, then again I have A type, B type, C type, and this forms the complex tissue. This is what I am trying to explain to you. So we have xylem, that is the complex permanent tissue, and it has 4 types of cells in it. 4 different types of cells. Now this xylem primarily is the wood, the furniture that you have at your house, that is xylem. This xylem is made up of 4 different types of cells, and this phloem is also made up of 4 different types of cells. Now what are those 4 different types of cells? Let us see. This xylem has the living part, that is xylem parenchyma, that would be similar to the parenchyma that we study over here. Then it has a non-living part, that is xylem fibers. Okay. Then we have the tracheids. Now you know this xylem is like water bottle for the plant. It carries the water content, and this phloem is responsible for taking the food from one part to other. So these, if it is water conducting tissue, it is going to have tubes. So the tube part is tracheids and vessels. So this part is for mechanical support, you can say, and this part is for conduction. Tracheids and vessels, you can say, they are the tubes of xylem. Now in the case of phloem, we would have same thing, phloem parenchyma. Then we would have phloem fibers, which are sclerenchymatous. Then we have companion cell and the main component, that is sieve tube cells. The name suggests that it has something sieve like component. We are going to study it, but just get introduced to the terms that these are the 2 types of complex permanent tissues which have different types of cells. That example ABCD that I gave you, the different types of cells would be these sorts. Moving on to animal tissues, nothing complex like this. There are 4 types, simplest ones. First is epithelial, the one which is responsible for providing outer surfaces, surface tissue you can call. The second one is connective tissue. I need not to get in the details now, but the name is quite suggestive in itself. Connective, it connects the other tissues. It is responsible for connective tissue, connecting the other tissues, the other ones that are being mentioned. Simplest example is blood. Then we have the muscular tissue, the one which is responsible for the movement that I am able to make with my hands and I am able to write and speak from my tongue, that is muscular tissue. Then we have the last one, nervous tissue, which is going to be utilized a lot. When you have to remember all this, you are going to utilize this nervous tissue a lot. So we have these types of tissues. Now how they are different, we are going to study. We are going to understand what is the role of each tissue, how it looks like. Now when I say how it looks like, I am going to deal with the structure of cell. And because we studied and understood that tissue is the level of organization where few cells are working together and performing a particular function, so we have to deal with the function, we have to deal with the types of cells which would be present inside it, and with this we will be done with the plants and animal tissues. And for that, you need to see the lectures which are coming next.